now. That's very useful. I also want to show you about making springs.
Yes.
And maybe that's not like right now. That could be like tomorrow.
Right.
And also, I want to show you about making gears. I don't know if everybody wants to, I could do this like individually or like in a, without everybody, it doesn't matter.
I think
We-
We really
it
want
would
to
be
see
good,
that.
it would be most rational to do it while everybody was looking. because
Okay,
I
so
think-
how about tomorrow morning or something? for
Sure,
that?
we
Because
can
it's
do
gonna
another
take a little
session.
bit of time.
Sure.
So we'll do that, we'll do the gears tomorrow. Yeah, and it's just a subset. It's a derivation of this, but it's a different kind of organization. Okay,
And that goes with this.
Yes.
This is part of that.
yeah, but I'm gonna use this tool now for this. It's a very useful tool. So basically, the principle of bending wire, it's always gonna be that you're holding it, you have a bend point, and you have either your finger, or in this case, a piece of other wire or steel
see.
to just push it around, okay? You're always bending around a point, okay? And that's exactly what this tool does, very, very simple. But in this case, this was something that Lena was asking about. I rarely do this, but there was one case where I had to make a whole bunch of linkages of exactly the same diameter, and this was for a 22 scrap piece. So I made a jig. Now, I made this quickly out of wood, but it could certainly, it's better to make it out of aluminum or metal, and I do have some flat aluminum there, so you could drill nice accurate holes on the drill press and make a nice jig if you wanted to, if you were going to repeat a piece.
Right.
So I'm just going to show you very quickly how this, the principle here.
But just to build it out of wood, you just took some TIG wire and pounded that in, right?
Yeah, so what I did was I just, I'm just using 1/16 inch, only because my bend point, so this is gonna be my bending tool,
All right.
and the long pin is going to be the point around which the wire is gonna bend, okay? I'm gonna drill a hole and stick that in.
Okay.
Okay, I drilled a hole, I basically, that stuck into the hole and I bent it around, okay?
Oh.
Aha.
And then a pin gets put in. So, there are two ways to do this. You can sort of build this. Now, here, let's say I wanted to make a piece that looked like
I see.
this. Okay, that's gonna be my goal. I'm gonna wanna continue the bend. So maybe that was my piece. Okay, so, I need a bend point there. Now, a drill press is nice because you get a nice perfectly square perpendicular hole.
So the jig is the holes, and you put in
Yeah.
the wire pieces as you go along.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so now, I don't know exactly how the angle of bend, in terms of okay, the wire, all wire has spring back, okay? So if I bend it this far, it's gonna
Spring back.
spring back a little bit. Because it's black annealed wire, it doesn't have much spring back. But you find that you start using this wire and it has much more spring back.
Right, right.
Okay? But here, so now I can just visually go to that point,
Oh, yeah.
like right there. Okay, yeah, excellent. I'll put that out and I'll put a pin there.
Is there a name for that tool?
Was that?
Is there a name for that tool? Like, I had to buy one at the store.
You make
This is not, you mean this hand tool?
Yeah.
Well, I made it, so it's,
Oh, okay.
it's, what should we
Archer
call it?
tool.
Let's come up with a name.
the two-pronged.
The Gansonian bender.
The
That
Gansonian.
is good. That
Yes.
is good.
It could be.
That is
Exactly.
good.
Okay.
Sounds like a drink too.
Yeah, Gansonian bender. It's actually something that happens over the course of several days.
Exactly.
Speaking of beer.
Now, somewhere, I might have it in the package, this is like interchangeable heads here. So I've got one, I think, with a heavier pin, like a 3/32 pin. Because this wire is so soft, I can get away with the 1/16. But using, say, this combination of wood and 1/16, if I was trying to bend 3/32 wire, it's not gonna work, okay? It's gonna overwhelm my jig. Okay, so I put that pin in prematurely. I need to bend around there.
Are those old drill bits in that tool? Like, the,
Okay, this one is, I think this, it's either 1/16 stainless steel wire or a drill blank, which is very
Durable.
hard?
strong and hard,
It's
but
tool
also brittle.
steel, basically, right?
Yeah, yes.
It's basically two pieces of wire.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
short, one long.
Here, actually, pass this around, look
Yeah,
at it.
please do.
Yeah.
So this was machined,
Let me see,
right?
while you're passing that around, yeah. I'm gonna just look for let's see if I have the other
Beautiful, simple,
heads.
It's very nice, yeah.
lovely tool.
You definitely need to make one.
Yeah.
Oh, come into focus. There we go.
You got lucky.
So are there any like blueprint or schematic plans for making one? Like if I were to take that to my school and go to the machine shop, is there dimensioning, like, because that looks like an amazingly efficient tool.
It is.
For one to have.
It's yeah. No, you could just draw it up easily. I mean,
Yeah.
we could just sketch it up if you
Right.
wanted to make it. Yeah, these are older ones. See, that one, I ended up putting the working pins at the end. And here, the working pins are on the side.
Right.
It still works the same, but rather than these pins coming out of the end, they're coming out of the side.
Right.
And I just found that there were many situations where having the working pins out of the end is just more useful. You know, again, it's a tool in evolution. And when I first made it,
You did the side.
I just thought that this was gonna be the best way, and I did it for a while. Because that was the first 1/16 head,
I see.
and then that was the second 1/16 head. And I've never made another one. This is a 3/32 head. You can pass that around.
Are these just friction fit? Or like what's holding the pins
It's
in?
got a set screw.
Screw.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
That one skipped you. Did you want to get it?
No, come on.
I definitely
Come into
need to
focus.
make one.
There
The
we
set
go.
screw holds both pins in place.
In this
Right.
case, yeah. In this case, you see I split it, and the set
Right,
screw,
right.
And
it's clamping.
the
those
distance
two.
between the center points of the two pins, is that important? Or,
It's,
I mean, fairly important, I would assume, but.
yeah, I mean, it's just within reason. Now,
Yeah.
it can be many different things,
Yeah,
but it really, technically, it just has to be wide enough so that it spans the thickness of the wire,
okay,
really.
The
Yeah.
distance between the pivot piece of wire and the actual little
Pushing
little grippy
It
guy.
just needs to be wide enough, and that just seemed to be a reasonable
and then
distance.
the depth in which you set the longer pin and the shorter pin, so the depth of the pin, there just has to be enough material jutting out, that it's also as thick as the wire, is that correct?
Yeah. So the short pin, in this case, the short pin is really just about 1/16 of an inch, because as I drag this around, you can see it's scraped the wood here.
Right.
I mean, wood is not really, if you're gonna make a lot of them,
Right.
it's not the greatest material, but we're just doing a little example.
Right.
I mean, ideally, you would use like an aluminum plate or a steel plate. But you see, I put the long pin in. Now, actually, right before I did this was much longer because I was using it with that tool. I shortened it a bit because I was finding that I didn't want to have it really any longer than that wood, okay? So I'm gonna put this pin in now with the short pin on the outside because I'm gonna wanna drag it around, okay? So the short pin is, because I'm bending around this way, I want to push the wire from the outside. So logically, the long pin is going to go in the hole and the short pin is going to be on the outside. And now this pin is very important because it's keeping this from pulling as I bend. There's a certain amount of force. There's a lot of friction and force. This wire is going to want to move this way, but it's being held back by this pin. So I can bend it. Like that. Now, what you're left with, given these conditions, is a sharpness of bend, which is what it is. If you really wanted a sharper, if you needed a real sharp bend, then you would maybe need to hold it with pliers and bend it that way. I mean, this is like just the natural bend of the steel.
So you usually use just pliers?
Well, most things I'm doing, I just use pliers, but as I said, there was a project where I was making many, many linkages that had to be
Yeah.
very accurate, and also one part of the linkage was a coil that needed to be sprung around a collar to hold it. It was really complicated, and I found that making something like this was, in the end, really the way to do it. So now, say I stop it there. Maybe that's going to be the length of my piece, for whatever reason. Okay, so let's take the pins out.
And is it necessary to keep every single pin that you put in? Or can you kind of
You can start to,
take one from the
you
back?
can take the ones from the back if you wanted to. I just find it's easier to leave them.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Okay.
And then do you, so when you're doing these kind of jigs, do you draw out your design first on the jig, or dimension it first? Kind of like when you drew it with pencil there.
When I did this before, I did.
Uh,
Yes, because I needed very specific dimensions.
So okay.
So that's why this was useful.
Okay.
Yes.
So then, let's say if you needed 1 inch, specifically 1 inch between bends,
Yeah.
where do you place your drill hole? Is it the center point of the drill hole to center point of the drill hole to make the 1 inch?
Well, it depends where you're measuring your 1 inch. If
Yeah,
you,
okay.
if it needed to be 1 inch from the outside of the wire to the outside of the wire,
Then you would add the.
then yeah. And I would just do trial and error and figure out what's the dimension you need to compensate. Yeah, yeah. But the cool thing now is that I can just duplicate that part. Okay.
There we go.
Mm.
So is there a reason why you don't put the pins back in and then just bend around it?
Yeah, yeah, because you
And-
see what I just did? I just bent that. And if the pins are in the way, it's so, right, it's so much harder.
Right.
Right, I can't make that kind of bend. Now here, what I'm doing is, and this is like, this tool is so nice. I'm gonna bend it, and I have to bend it so I can see just past, so I can slip that guide pin in, okay? Because I know that I'm gonna be on the outside of that next bend. Okay, so that's right there. So we can take this out and put the pin back in. Now you can see how the first bend here, it's actually a little bit not as tight. Okay, so let's go to the next one, the outside. Yeah, and another reason why this head is really nice is because with this one here, I wouldn't have the clearance trying to make that bend
Oh, right.
Yeah.
with this in the way, right? So that's why I went to this head.
So it sounds like from kind of
Yeah.
that point on, you've
Yeah,
moved.
I've never gone back because it just made more sense. You know, it's like you
Yeah,
learn
yeah, sure.
what works. Okay, so now I'm gonna bend it just past. You see that the spring back?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just tweak it just past. Okay, there we go.
I guess if you don't have that tool, I mean, could you put the first pin in, bend it around by hand?
Yes.
The next pin in,
Yes.
bend it around by hand.
Yes,
I guess, yeah. That
yeah,
would-
absolutely.
Now, did you mill this yourself, like the heads, or did
Yeah.
you send it off? Okay.
No, I made this on a milling
Some
machine.
kind of thing that
Yeah.
is a bit like
You do it with a
Yeah.
needle or
a
a
fork or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
that
That's the
has
way we can make
some
Yeah.
strength.
What are you looking for?
Could use a fork. Good fork.
here.
There's the thing you.
Oh, so there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just,
Yeah.
if you
That
don't
would
have a
work too.
machine shop to,
That would work too.
cool.
Right, right.
Maybe not a fork.
What was that?
I said maybe you could use a fork for that, but
I mean, maybe a fork.
yeah,
If you-
you just
Fork.
need something
Bend
that
one
is
of the
stronger than your
prongs.
fingers.
You just need
and-
something stronger than your fingers,
Yeah.
right?
You could
right.
chop off some of the tines.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
but
Now-
I mean, wire
right,
fork is
right.
something else.
Now, maybe it would be faster in this case, given this situation. You see, I bent it, and rather than put this in and take it out, because you
Yeah.
asked the question, I put the pin in, and I'm finding that, oh, well, that works just as well, so it's actually one less step.
There you go.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
didn't know
It's just as-
if like
What's one less?
having the two heads attached
Oh, yeah.
was better or,
Oh, okay.
you know, I,
It's
I didn't know
just
if you maybe-
useful. It's just useful.
Yeah.
I'm so used to doing it this way, and it ends up like, I mean, I made this for the gear making tool, where there's many situations where it's just hard to do it with pliers. When I started to make wire gears, I was bending them all with pliers, all with just by hand. And then after many years, I made that tool. Actually, after I went to a company outside of Boston to buy a wire bending tool, which they advertised could bend any shape. And I brought some of my gears, and there's no way that they could bend these gears with that wire bending tool. And then I remember in frustration, when I was driving back, I thought, wait a second, how am I gonna do this? And that's conceived of that, which is a very
Right,
simple
right,
tool. But of course, now you can buy a machine. Just look on the web and look at these amazing
Yeah, I
wire
saw it,
bending.
it comes out all
What?
bent.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, I'm in the Stone Age. No, really, really. I mean, if you see what you can do now with essentially a CNC digital
The tube
machine
benders.
bender.
Oh,
Right.
those are
They
so-
come
it's,
out.
it's
Yeah,
like,
we
it
know that
looks like
it's
spaghetti. It
And
looks
the
so
wires,
effort.
yeah, the wire is coming out, and you've got a little head there, and it bends it accordingly.
Yeah.
You can bend round, you can bend oh, it's unbelievable. Anyway,
Who knew?
Don't get frustrated now.
no, no. I've never been, it's never been an impediment, so
No, that's good.
it's fine. I could take this off. Oh, yes,
There we go. Beautiful.
That's
they're so nice and almost exact. Yeah, they're exact enough
yeah, good enough
Yeah.
government work.
for government work. Right.
Yeah. Little things.
Yeah, so making gears is a derivation of that, it's the same thing,
Awesome.
but we can do that tomorrow. What time is it? Because I want to just show you the spot welder.
Yeah.
So 11:36.
Okay,
Yeah.
any questions right now with any of this stuff?
Not yet.